Hello and welcome back to the beach. Today what we're looking at is relevant costs, very specifically for decision making. And what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about what decision making is all about first, and we're going to start having a look at how we can now potentially make decisions, which is where the relevant costs start to come up. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to say decisions. What is a decision? A decision is where we have two different alternatives, paths we can take, and we now decide which one is the best path that we can potentially take. Now, one of the ways we will potentially make this decision is based on cash flows. Now that means I need to have an understanding of what relevant cash flows really are. So to identify what these relevant cash flows are, I need to look at cash flows that are going to potentially change because of my decision. So it's not every single cash flow which is going to be important to me. So it's not every single cash flow which is going to be important to me. It's only cash flows that are relevant to my decision. Oh, okay, Ed, that makes sense. How do I determine whether or not a cash flow is relevant? A cash flow becomes relevant if it changes because of my decision. So we're only interested in cash flows which are going to change because of this specific decision that we're going to take. And what we have are various different types of cash flows, and you need to have a basic understanding of the various different types of cash flows you can have. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of these different types of cash flows, and we're going to identify which of these cash flows are potentially relevant to my decision. So if a cash flow is relevant, I will take it into account within my decision-making process. If it is not relevant, I will completely ignore it. So if it's relevant, I will take it into account. If it's not relevant, I'm going to completely ignore it. So let's start off with our sunk costs. Sunk costs are costs that you've already incurred, or it's expenses that you've already contracted to incur. So sunk costs or past costs are monies that you've already spent or money that is already contracted to be spent. A decision on whether or not a new endeavor is started or not will have no impact on this cost, therefore no impact on this cash flow. Therefore sunk costs are not relevant, and sunk costs should never be included in my decision-making process. So sunk costs will not be included in my decision-making process. So they're not relevant. The second type of cost we have is a fixed cost. Fixed costs will only be relevant if they change because of my decision. That means that if you've got some sort of reapportionment of fixed costs to a new project, that reapportionment of existing fixed costs will not be relevant to the decision because that will not increase my fixed costs. Therefore, there's no difference. However, any additional new fixed costs which come about because of this new project, they will become relevant, and they do now need to be included within my decision. So a fixed cost, if it's already being incurred, is not relevant and should not be included in my decision-making process. However, if it's a new fixed cost, then it does need to be included within my decision-making process because the increase in fixed costs will now be relevant. Opportunity costs are a really interesting one. An opportunity cost is the benefit foregone from the next best opportunity. So this is the benefit foregone from the next best opportunity. The opportunity that you forego from using the assets in this project, they will be relevant to my decision. So if you're at a situation whereby you can use an asset to create $100 worth of gains or $150 in its existing use, you'd use it for the $150. That now becomes part of your cost-benefit analysis. So the opportunity cost is a key cost when we're looking at any type of decision making. I need you to highlight this in a big way, please, guys. This is really, really important. Opportunity costs are critical to decision making. Depreciation expenses, you know what? Depreciation expenses aren't even a cash flow, therefore I don't care. So depreciation expenses are not going to be any type of relevant cash flow, therefore I completely ignore the depreciation expense within my decision making process. However, if additional assets are needed for the purchase or for this project to be completed, that now means that the additional purchase cost will become a relevant cash flow. Oh, hang on a minute, Ed. So depreciation is not relevant, but the cash flows incurred to purchase new non-current assets, they will be relevant because only cash flows become relevant. So only cash flows become relevant. Now, this gets a little bit more weird and wonderful when we start looking at the various different types of additional costs incurred within the project, such as materials that we're going to use. If you've got materials that have to be purchased, then the purchase price becomes relevant. So materials which have to be purchased, then the purchase price will be relevant. If you've got materials that you already hold on to, then the relevant cost will be the opportunity cost, i.e. what they could be sold for, or the benefits generated from using them in a different project. So if you've got existing inventory of materials, then we're looking at the opportunity cost. If you're looking to purchase new materials, then we're looking at the purchase cost. So materials costs could potentially be opportunities lost or the new purchase cost of these materials. So if we can't use these materials in inventory elsewhere, then I'm thinking about the resale value. So if I can't use materials elsewhere, then I'm thinking of the resale value. If I can use them elsewhere, I'm thinking about the opportunity cost being the benefit from using these things elsewhere. And the benefit from using these things elsewhere might be based on a marginal costing contribution calculation. So I'm looking at how much extra contribution I can make from these materials. Okay? Now, the type of decisions that could potentially be made here would include things such as, should I make an asset? Should I buy the asset in? So we've got production decisions such as make or buy decisions within production. Should I continue the operation of part of a business? Should I dispose of that part of the business? Look at the relevant cash flows there. That could be absolutely critical. And then also investment decisions. And as soon as I start talking about investment decisions, that now means I can start moving into discounted cash flows. The DCFs, the discounted cash flow section that comes up after this session, looks at discounting relevant cash flows. So you have to understand relevant cash flows first before you can get into DCFs. Right, that brings me up to the end of this session. Thank you ever so much for your time and attention, boys and girls. I do appreciate you joining us on these short sessions. And apart from that, I hope you've had a good day, and I will see you all back on the beach very, very soon. Take care and bye for now.